Where'd you stay?
I stayed at the Royal Hotel in Russell Square.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Is it cold over there, Elliot? We
uh,
can't hear you. You're muted, Elliot.
I said, oh yeah, I think they turned on the air at my office. They finally did not turn on the heat.
Live streaming.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we're.
You have 6 members present.
Yep. I'll wait another minute or two for Dr. Goldson and then we'll get started. Smith. I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm sure that Dr. Goldson will be along shortly. Good afternoon, everyone. This is the meeting of the State Board of Education's Education Policy Committee. We have a very packed agenda ahead of us today, lots of COMAR items to take a look at today and a presentation on the revised social studies standards. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I thank everyone for their presence here today, and I thank the public for attending and for their interest. So we're going to start today with the revised social studies standards, and I believe we are welcoming Peter Ramsey and possibly Howard Libet. Is that correct?
Howard's going to be joining. He's going to be watching from the YouTube link.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Dr. Smith, are you going to share your screen for the presentation?
No. Hold on. No, Peter, I don't have it up.
I can pull it up. Give me 1 second. I'm sorry. Okay. Everyone should be able to see my screen now. Let me know if that is not the case, and I will go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, members of the State Board of Education's Education Policy Committee. My name is Peter Ramsey. I'm the Director of Social Studies at the Maryland State Department of Education. Today, I'm going to be presenting the work of the Social Studies Standards and Frameworks Validation Committee, also known as the Educate to Stop the Hate Committee. I also serve as the co-chair of this committee. This presentation is going to provide an overview of our process, guiding principles, some key revisions, and also next steps. So you see here the presentation outline. The Social Studies SFEC was convened to review and propose updates to Maryland's social studies frameworks. This initiative aligns with our goal of improving student outcomes by addressing the diverse needs of Maryland students. Today, I'm going to walk you through the timeline of our work, the principles that guided us, and how we engage stakeholders, and examples of the revisions that we are proposing. The SFVC's work began in June 2024 with an application process, vision setting, and review of existing frameworks. During the summer, we held drafting sessions informed by educator and stakeholder feedback. Throughout the fall, we refined these drafts based on an iterative review and discussion, culminating in unanimous approval of the proposed revisions in November. We are now preparing for a public comment period to gather additional feedback before finalizing the frameworks. The work of the Social Studies SFEC has been rooted in the commitment to improve student outcomes by ensuring that curricular resources address the diverse needs, abilities, and interests of all students while actively challenging racism and hate. The proposed revisions align with the College, Career, and Civic Life, or C3 framework, as required by COMAR. This alignment ensures that the frameworks promote inquiry-based and student-centered learning, equipping students with the skills needed to think critically, engage civically, and make meaningful connections with social studies content. The guiding principles you see here before you include equity and representation, so ensuring that all students feel valued through the inclusion of diverse perspectives and narratives, improving student outcomes, fostering critical thinking, civic competence, and meaningful engagement with social studies content, addressing diverse needs and interests, so developing curricular resources that reflect the varied perspectives, abilities, and interests of Maryland's student population, challenging racism and hate, embedding inclusive narratives to actively confront bias and promote understanding and respect for all, and then alignment with emergent needs, preparing students for a complex and interconnected world by responding to evolving societal and educational priorities. I want to take a moment to talk a little bit about the engagement and representation within the Social Studies SFVC. The Social Studies SFVC included a diverse group of educators, administrators, parents, and community leaders from across Maryland. We collected extensive feedback from local education agencies and other stakeholders, ensuring that the frameworks are inclusive and actionable. This collaborative process underscores the commitment to creating resources that resonate with Maryland's educational community. Now I'd like to transition to talking a little bit about what's in the proposed revisions themselves. So by the numbers, the proposed revisions demonstrate that the SFVC's highly intentional and targeted approach to revising the social studies frameworks, overwhelmingly the existing frameworks and standards and frameworks, remain aligned with both the C3 framework and Maryland's instructional goals. These revisions were carefully considered and narrowly focused on areas where adjustments were necessary to enhance inclusivity, reflect emerging needs, or strengthen alignment with guiding principles. This data highlights two important points. First, the strong alignment of the existing standards and frameworks demonstrates that Maryland's social studies curriculum has a robust foundation. And second, the revisions proposed by the committee represent a focused effort to refine and improve key elements without introducing unnecessary changes, ensuring that the work remains manageable for educators and impactful for students. I'd now like to shift to talk a little bit about some of the highlighted changes that we are proposing. So I'd like to begin here that we're highlighting with a revision that we're highlighting from grade 1. Specifically within Unit 1 Civics. This example reflects how this SFVC approached the task of refining the frameworks with care and intentionality, ensuring that even the youngest learners are exposed to concepts that promote civic understanding and personal responsibility. In the original framework, first graders were expected to explain the importance of community by identifying its benefits. While this goal was appropriate for early learners, the committee recognized the opportunity to expand the focus and emphasize the reciprocal nature of being part of a community. The revised framework adds the concept of responsibilities alongside benefits, encouraging students to think critically about their role within a community. This adjustment introduces the idea that being a part of a community involves both privileges and obligations, laying an early foundation for understanding civic engagement. By incorporating responsibilities into this objective, the committee ensures that students begin to develop an early understanding of how their actions can positively impact those around them. This small but meaningful change exemplifies how the SFEC's commitment to fostering a sense of civic competence and engagement, even at an elementary level. And now I'd like to talk a little bit about an example from middle school. So the example you see in front of you here is a targeted proposal from 6th grade, Unit 3, Human Systems, Political Structures. This example illustrates how the Social Studies SFEC approached the revisions with a focus on enhancing depth, clarity, and inclusivity while maintaining alignment with overarching educational goals. In the original framework, students were tasked with analyzing contemporary examples of authoritarian regimes in the 21st century. The revised framework expands this analysis to include both the 20th and 21st centuries. This broader historical scope provides students with a more comprehensive understanding of how authoritarian policies have shaped and continue to influence human rights, economic opportunities, and technological access. The revisions also explicitly integrate the Holocaust as a critical historical example. This inclusion not only aligns with Maryland's commitment to Holocaust education, but also ensures students understand the profound impacts of authoritarian regimes in both historical and contemporary context. And I'm going to transition now to an example from our high school frameworks. A key example from our high school frameworks is from Unit 2, World War I, Prosperity, Depression, and World War II. These highlights how the SFAC carefully refined the frameworks to provide students with a deeper and more nuanced understanding of a pivotal historical event and their broader implications. In the original framework, students were tasked with assessing the impact of post-war demobilization on racial tension and the Red Scare. While this provided an essential foundation for understanding the domestic effects of World War I, the revision expands and sharpens the focus to include a critical analysis of the Red Scare itself. The revised framework introduces specific attention to the anti-Semitic and xenophobic narratives that linked Jewish communities to radicalism and communism during the Red Scare. This edition provides historical context for how these associations influenced significant anti-immigration legislation of the era. This revision reflects the SFEC's commitment to ensuring that the frameworks deepen students' understanding of the interactions between domestic policy and social dynamics, addresses the historical impacts of anti-Semitism and xenophobia, encourages students to critically examine how fear and prejudice influence legislative decisions. And by refining the framework in this way, the committee ensures that students are exposed to a more comprehensive narrative of this historical period. The revised objective not only aligns with Maryland's guiding principles on inclusivity and historical accuracy, but also equips students with the analytical tools to explore how societal fears can influence policy and shape the nation's trajectory. And with that, I'm going to transition to talking a little bit about next steps. So finally, I would like to highlight the next steps in this process, the release of the revised social studies frameworks for a 30-day public comment period in February. This phase is critical as we continue to refine these frameworks to better serve Maryland's students and educators. I also want to highlight my co-chair who was mentioned earlier in this meeting, Mr. Howard Libet, who also serves as the executive director of the Baltimore Jewish Council I just want to mention that he has been an invaluable help and offered amazing guidance as we've gone through this process. So I really want to say thank you to Howard for all of his help. And with that, I'll bring my presentation to a close, and I'd be happy to take any of your questions. My apologies, the light in my office turned off, so that's why it got a little bit dark behind me.
Thank you, Mr. Ramsey. Would you mind bringing down the presentation so that we can,
Yes, you got it. Give me one
if
second.
anyone has questions?
My apologies. I think I have it here.
Yeah. We need you to stop sharing your screen.
Yep, sorry, I'm trying. For some
Okay.
reason, I'm having some issues. Sorry. Not sure why it's doing this.
All right. Well, in the meantime, while you're working on that, are there any members of the committee who have a question? Please feel free to unmute and, oh, there we go.
There we
Thank
go.
you.
Sorry about
All right.
that. Whew.
Okay. Thank you. I know sometimes, it's great till it doesn't work. Do we have any questions from members of the State Board Committee? Comments? Oh, Dr. Johnson?
Yeah, looking on slide 9 and slide 8 and 9, there are bullet points that you have highlighted in yellows. Those are only examples. Are there other examples that the students will be analyzing as a result of the Red Scare?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So what you see on slide 8 and 9, the highlighted portion of the text represent the additions to the framework. There are other examples of anti-Semitism or xenophobia as it relates to the Red Scare. That particular objective is the main objective in the U.S. history framework that deals with the Red Scare.
So I'm thinking about multiculturalism. So how does it include African Americans as a result of this Red Scare? How did it impact them? How did it impact Native Americans? Are we just going to look at anti-Semitism and xenophobia associated with Jews?
Yeah, that's a great question. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure it's going to be inclusive. Does it include other nationalities?
Yes. Oh,
Other
sorry.
nationalities?
Yes, I can say without a doubt, the entirety of the proposed revisions are very inclusive. So this is just three examples. In the provided report, the entirety of the proposed revisions are there, the committee worked really hard to include proposed revisions that were inclusive of all people.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question.
Anyone else? Ms. Chang?
Yeah, to dovetail with Dr. Johnson's question, yeah, the scope, since there are so many topics can be addressed or can be used as examples, are they going to be across different grade, have different examples or a different kind of targeted topics instead of, just included in every grade level?
Yeah, another great
Thank you.
question. Another great question. The report that outlines all of the proposed revisions has all of the explicit proposed changes that we are seeking to make. And to your point, there are, each one is very targeted, and there are changes across every grade level, K through 12, but they are narrowly defined and very specific to best practices across the country in social studies, as well as the goals, the educational goals here in Maryland.
So thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Ramsey. We appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing the presentation for the full board on the 28th.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your time. Moving on next, we have COMAR 13A.07.01, teacher induction regulations with Kelly Meadows. Ms. Meadows, are you ready?
I am. Good afternoon. May I share my screen?
Absolutely.
Are you able to see the slide deck?
Not yet.
Let me try one more time. How about now?
Not yet. Oh, there it is. Yep, it's up now.
Great. Okay. So good afternoon. I'm here today to request permission to publish amendments to the teacher induction regulations. Before we get into the regulations themselves, I would like to provide a little bit of background. This has been work that we have been doing at the agency since 2023. Which all started with a teacher induction work group. That work group started meeting in the summer and through the fall of 2023. And the objectives of that work group were to identify evidence-based induction and mentoring practices found to increase student outcomes and teacher retention. So that's really what drove the work group. We did compare Maryland induction guidelines that are current to national best practices and ultimately recommended guidelines for induction based on evidence-based practices. You see here the representation in the work group. We had a very diverse group, and it was important that from these organizations, we saw diversity with regard to the roles that they hold in Maryland. So we had, from a local superintendent to new teachers, mentor teachers, educator preparation faculty. We had representation from the Professional Standards Board, from the Accountability and Implementation Board staff. So you can see here all the organizations that did this work. We also partnered with the New Teacher Center in this work, which is a national consultant and has expertise in this area. So in a nutshell, the work group recommendations were really categorized by programmatic recommendations, mentoring recommendations, and recommendations for the evaluation of an induction program. So expanding who is required to participate in the induction program, requiring a staffing model that includes a program leader, someone on the ground that is going to coordinate this work, standardizing the required programmatic requirements so that it's not we do understand that this work is not a one-size-fits-all, and there needs to be room for LEA customization, but really determining what are our non-negotiables and making sure that they are in those regulations. Requiring professional learning for our school leaders in the teacher induction program. Of course, aligning the programmatic elements to the blueprint, including those 5 core propositions of MBCT. So as we move to the mentoring piece, establishing guidelines for how we select mentors, both before and after the career ladder is established. The work group did feel that we should define the number of minutes of mentoring a month that a new educator receives, and outline the acceptable focus areas for that mentor training. Don't just leave it as, we can call anything mentoring, but really grounding it in instructional mentoring. And then finally, establishing the components that have to be present when LEAs evaluate their mentoring and induction programs. So just really quickly, I want to remind you that the blueprint does have specific requirements with regard to induction. You see them here, and they can be found in 6-1002. And then there are some other areas of the blueprint that also mention induction here. High level, it says the department shall develop guidelines. And when we develop these guidelines, there are some entities that we must consult with. We had to consult with local education agencies and the Maryland Education Deans and Directors. And I'll talk a little bit more in a minute about all of the consultation that took place. The guidelines also have to include provisions for mentoring and professional development training for new teachers, as well as incorporate the framework for the teacher induction, retention, and advancement pilot program. We often refer to that as TIRA. That was a program that took place between 2017 and 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And in essentially what that was a way to pilot collaborative time. Looking at a 60-40 split and giving new teachers specifically, that additional 20% minimum of time, which in essence equaled the 60-40. The law also says that a mentor teacher for an induction program must be highly competent. So you're going to see in the regulations really that fleshed out. And then after the career ladder is well established, the law says that mentor teachers will be on level 4 of the career ladder. So those are our lead teachers, our professor teachers, and our professor distinguished teachers. So there was a lot of consultation that took place, and that took place in 2024. So in between the time that the work group made their recommendations and September 2024, internally we drafted pretty significant changes to the existing regulations. We started soliciting feedback formally in September, first from our local education agencies, as well as the Accountability and Implementation Board. We solicited feedback from our institutions of higher education, deans and directors, which are the deans and directors of Maryland Educator Preparation Programs in October. We received feedback from the staff of the AIB in October. And then in December, we did formally consult with the Professional Standards and Teacher Education Board because induction falls within Title VI, Subtitle 10 of the statute. We are required to consult with the Professional Standards Board, but these are not regulations that I usually bring to you where both boards have to agree and vote. The state board is the sole board that will vote on these regulations with the consultation from the PISTAB. I will also mention that all of the feedback that we received from all of these entities is already included for the majority. There was feedback that we received that we did not feel was appropriate, but the vast majority of feedback that we received from all of these entities is incorporated in the draft version of regulations that you have before you. So looking at those final recommendations, the next 5 slides or so are in alignment with the regulations of the register. So I have summarized them on the slide, but they do align with, if you're looking at the regulations, you can start from the top. The first portion is incorporated by reference, and this is in alignment with national standards. This is new to the chapter. We are recommending that local education agencies develop their induction programs in alignment with several sets of standards. The first being the standards for professional learning that this board recognized in 2024. The second being INTASC, which is the Model Core Teaching Standards and Learning Progression that we require all of our educator preparation programs to align to. Social justice standards, the EST, or International Society for Technology and Education standards, and the Model Code of Ethics for Educators. Minimum requirements for participation. The current regulations do require 3 years of induction. That looks very different right now across the state. So the language in this version is stronger. We have expanded the definition of new teacher to read that not only is it an individual who's professionally licensed and has less than 3 years of a teaching experience, which is a definition that we're used to, but also one that holds a conditional license or a resident teacher license. Those conditional license holders specifically, you could hold a conditional license for 4 or 5 years. So the feedback that we got, especially from our LEAs, was clear that if you are on a conditional license, you should still be involved in that teacher induction, and you should not be considered a veteran teacher if you're not fully prepared and licensed. For the veteran teachers, this definition is pretty similar to the one that exists now, professionally licensed and new to the local school system and has less than 3 years of teaching experience. So if you, sorry, going to happen. So if you are an individual that's coming from out of state, or if you are moving from district to district and you meet the eligibility here, then you would have to have 1 year of induction, not 3. But again, it's an and. So you're professionally licensed and you're new to the local school system and you have less than 3 years. And in that instance, you would have 1 year of induction. Programmatic requirements. Many of them are carried over, but you're going to see a lot of new requirements as well. I'm just going to highlight the new ones for you tonight. Ongoing participation in an educator professional learning community. A focus on state and local school system initiatives and priorities, blueprint, strategic plan, local school system strategic plan. Professional learning specifically to work with students with disabilities, multilingual learners, and as well as professional learning for differentiating instruction. Professional learning for using technology in education. Again, review and assessment of that model code of ethics for educators. Not only what is it, but how does it look in practice? And do you understand what that means? Job embedded, individualized, and differentiated mentoring. So in the current regulations, mentoring is there, but specifying that it should be individualized, it should be differentiated, and it should be job embedded. Ongoing professional learning for the multi-tiered system of supports framework. Opportunities for new teachers to observe and co-teach with skilled teachers. And a plan for professional licensure, if applicable, because we do have, again, 10% of our teaching workforce is conditionally licensed. Those individuals need to understand what to do in order to become professionally licensed. That should be a part of teacher induction. Turning to mentoring requirements, again, the focus is on instruction. It's job embedded, and it begins as soon as the teacher is hired. The standards that are developed and used at the LEA level for mentoring should be focused, systematic, and geared to the needs of each teacher, again, with the differentiation. And it does need to include opportunities for observations with feedback. Everything should be aligned to the 5 core propositions, which again is in the statute, which means a focus on planning instructional practices and analyzing student learning. Support for new teachers in developing culturally relevant teaching practices also has to be a part of the mentoring program. And to the extent practicable, we're recommending that each new teacher receive at least 180 minutes of mentoring a month. I will share that the work group felt like this should be a shall, that this should be a minimum requirement. We got feedback from our LEAs. There was a lot of concern here. We ended up changing the language to what you see here. But the 180 minutes was the recommendation of the work group. When choosing mentors, the regulations do flesh out what that process needs to entail, including a demonstration of the mentor's instructional expertise, which can be done through a performance task or submission of instructional data. We do want to make sure that they continue to hold at least a professional and advanced professional license. We don't want a conditionally licensed or a brand new initial professional licensed teacher acting as a mentor. They should have recommendation from a school or district leader who has previously or currently supervises the individual. And then again, the statute does say once the career ladder is established, the designation of mentor should be given to lead distinguished or professor distinguished teachers. We are suggesting that the local school systems establish a process that correlates licensure areas and grade bands when selecting mentors, and to consider diversity markers to the extent practicable. The regulations also state that mentors must receive initial and ongoing training, and that you can see is fleshed out a little bit more in the regulatory language. And they may not participate in the formal evaluation of a mentee, which is not new. Evaluation of the induction program. Each local school system does have to develop a comprehensive evaluation plan. You can see here that there are some factors that they have to include, including, perception data from both the mentor and the mentee. What is their retention like? What is the evidence of the number of mentoring minutes that the individual receives each month? So we, when evaluating the program, really getting into the nitty gritty of what's going on, not just, are we doing it? And then finally, there is a compliance and reporting requirement. This is aligned with the AIB comprehensive plan. In the AIB plan, it says that local school systems have to develop a teacher induction program aligned with the blueprint by July 1st, 2027. And so we are requesting that those plans come to us by July 1st, 2027. And that has to include not only a description of the plan, but a description of how they're going to evaluate the plan. And then starting July 1st, 2029, let's let it happen and roll out and see how it's working. And then every 3 years thereafter, we will collect data from our LEAs on their mentee and mentor, as well as their evaluation of the comprehensive induction program. So that is, in summary, the drafted amendments that you see before you, and we are requesting permission to publish these amendments to the Maryland Register for public comment.
Thank you. Oh, you read my mind. Pulled that screen right down. Are there any board members with questions or comments? Dr. Lewis?
Yeah, I go back to slide 11, which also mirrors the language in the proposed regulation that you mentioned, that talked about to the extent practical, each teacher should get 180 minutes per month of mentoring. And in light of the pause to the planning time and the 60-40, how does that work? Can a district just say it's not practicable, we can't do 180 minutes, you're going to get 30 minutes, or you're going to get no minutes? I just don't know how that plays out, because the shall is there, but it's proceeded with to the extent practicable, giving staffing and fiscal concerns.
Absolutely. Yes, I hear your question, and I share potential concern of how that could look. So I think in the whole, we have several regulations in a chapter, and what an LEA has to demonstrate is that they are meeting the terms of these regulations if adopted as is. And if they can I don't think they can show us that they're doing that by saying we're only going to give 30 minutes a month. With that said, it's probably worth discussing whether or not this should be a shall or to the extent practicable.
Well, currently, as I read it, it's both, which is what confuses me.
Oh, I see.
Both clauses are there.
So
to the extent practical, each teacher shall.
Yeah.
That's what's causing me conflict.
It's the way that it's written. Is it causing you conflict that it's a potential may, or just the way that it's written?
It's a potential may. The way it's written in my mind is a potential may.
Yeah. So the way that it's intended to be, and again, these haven't gone anywhere, so this is the time to make. The way that it's intended to be interpreted is it's a recommendation that it's 180. The mentoring has to happen, but it's a may. The 180 is a may.
Okay. That to me, that's in conflict with this language. I feel that it's in conflict with the language presented.
I I saw Chairman Cusker mouthing Mr. Paul, so I'm going to take that as the.
Mr. Paul,
I read. Thank you. I read it not as a may, but definitely as a recommendation that provides an out. I wonder if this kind of construction appears. This is on me for not searching for it. I wonder if this kind of construction appears anywhere else in the regs where it's like you shall be doing this, but if for some reason it's not practicable, then you need to tell us why it's not practicable, and we need to tell you that that's okay. I mean, that seems like something that would resolve the like shall plus the attempt to be reasonable about like if there's a reason why you can't do 180 minutes, then tell us why. Does this appear anywhere else, or is there any standard for how to deal with this kind of situation?
So it actually appears in the current regulations. And it's something that the work group talked at length about because it actually appears in the current regulations in more than one place. And that was part of our discussions at the work group were kind of moving away from the consider and to the extent practicable. So it does live in the existing induction regulations. But I'm also hearing perhaps if we added stronger language in the compliance and reporting section to say, because there is a requirement that they have to report on the evaluation of the induction program, evidence of the number of instructional driven mentoring minutes every month, we could potentially put something in about an explanation as to why the minimum 180 was not practicable. Was that the other piece of that?
Yeah, I could imagine there being one situation is the LEA decides the program we're putting together will not feature 180 minutes, and they either have a bad reason for it, such that they're not meeting the to the extent practicable, language, or they have a good reason for it, and it's actually not practicable for some real reason. And okay, I want to know what that is. The other possibility is they have a policy that says 180 minutes, but they're not actually doing 180 minutes. And that we also want to know about, because then presumably we would be finding that LEA in violation after someone raises it to us, or we take some kind of action on it. So I see those as like three possibilities. I don't know, Dr. Luce, is that sound making sense? Compared to what you were thinking?
100%. That makes 100% sense to me.
So
I think language in the evaluation and the data collection could help wrap that up.
does anyone want to make a motion on that so that we vote on whether or not we ask for changes on this before it comes before the board, or do we just informally? Mr. Hands, can you help me with the procedure on this?
What I think you can do is you can, in your motion, you can move that in the recommendation that goes to the full board, that staff address language in this particular section for what gets presented on the 28th.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments?
Can I ask a clarifying question about that? So I heard Mr. Paul give a couple options. So I'll get started on the language already, now. So is it the evaluation and data piece that we're going with, that this committee is recommending, or is it to say it's not to the extent practical, it's the policy? Because I feel like I heard both options.
I think we have to wait and see what the motion is. I think what
we have to have a motion, or
okay, Mr. Paul, anyone care to make a motion? Mr. Paul.
well, actually, I don't have a motion. I was just hoping to do clarifying language, or to clarify. Should I hold off and we wait for a motion to come in?
We need a motion to come in, and then we can.
Can I have a question before we do a motion?
Yes, Dr. Johnson.
So would the clarification of that language be included in the guidance doc that's going to go out to the LEAs?
It could be, but I think the regulation is probably the more appropriate place to put it.
Yeah, and it has to go through, we're right at the beginning of the process, so we would publish it and then it has to go through the promulgation process before the LEAs would see the actual finished regulation to give guidance on, right?
So we're going to not give them a guidance document to go along with the regulation, or we're just going to give them the regulation?
No, we would give a regulation, but we can't even do that until it's passed. I mean, we can't do a guidance document until the final regulation is passed. This is just permission to publish. So this is just going out for public comment.
So I guess what I'm asking, Ms. Mikowski, is that if we keep the language as it is now, but in the guidance document, clarify what the language means, would that be okay?
I think we would have to, I think we'd have to approach that in a motion, in
Okay.
discussion. We need, I think we need a motion. Mr. Paul?
Okay, I move for modifications somewhere in the regulation, potentially in the reporting section, that would require LEAs to report the reason that 180 minutes of teacher mentoring is not practicable if they are not providing 180 minutes of mentorship as required by the regs. Have I captured it properly?
Yes, I
Is there a
second that.
second? Thank you,
I
Dr.
second.
Lewis. Discussion of the motion. Seeing none, I will call for a vote on the motion to modify the reporting section to require LEAs to report why they do not meet, when they do not meet 180 minutes, why they have not met that. Have I captured that correctly, Mr. Paul?
Yeah, and if there's helpful, if the color is helpful, something, even a brief letter explaining why that they've made that choice, or why it's not reasonably practicable to do the 180 minutes is enough compared to what I'm envisioning.
Okay. So any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'm going to take a vote on the motion to modify the language as stated. All in favor of modifying the language, please raise your hand and say aye. This is members of the committee only, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Goodell, oh, I see. Okay, I think that's unanimous. Okay, so now I can entertain a motion of whether or not we will recommend permission to publish with the modification. Dr.
So
Lewis?
moved.
A second?
I second.
Dr. Mayla McCarthy? Okay. All in favor of a recommendation for permission to publish with the requested modifications, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Aye. I believe we are unanimous. So we will recommend permission to publish with the modification that I guess will be brought to the meeting on the 28th. Okay. All right. Dr. Meadows, are you squared away and good with that? Do you?
I'm good, but I am not a doctor, so.
I do that to you all the time. I just think of
Thank
you that
you.
way. I'm sorry.
Not earn that.
I do that to you all the time. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Meadows. I appreciate it. And moving on, I believe we are going to now have our COMAR 13A 070603 incorporation by reference. And Ms. Meadows, you are up again.
Thank you. We're also requesting permission to publish this regulation. The incorporation by reference is a part of the educator preparation program approval regulations, which were just repealed and replaced in April of 2024 by both this board and the Professional Standards Board. The incorporation by reference is the regulation that lists all of the national standards that our teacher preparation programs have to align to. And this is a regulation that we will have to bring back each year, because there will always be changes, there will always be revisions, national standards change. And so this is the first time that we're bringing it back as just a matter of course. This year, because we just published this, we happen to have also found errors in some of the dates in the incorporated standards. So some of the changes that you see are you're gonna be clear, they are new dates, but some of the dates that you see are gonna go back in time, and you're gonna wonder why. And the reason is because they were errors. What we ended up finding out and going through everything again is sometimes standards are published, like an electronic version is published, and we were using that date, but really the standards hadn't changed. And so we've corrected those. So it's a combination of those two things. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the committee or members of the board? Okay, seeing none, I will entertain a motion on permission to publish, a recommendation for permission to publish. Moved by Mr. Paul. Do I have a second? Seconded by
I'll
Dr.
second.
John. Oh, okay. Second. I think Dr. Johnson beat you to that, Dr. Goldson. So we have a second
No
by
worries.
Dr. Johnson. All in favor of recommending permission to publish, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Okay. That is unanimous, and we will recommend permission to publish on incorporation by reference. Thank you, Ms. Meadows. I appreciate it. Okay. And moving on now to our legislative update, and we welcome Dr. Aileen.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. So this update should be fairly quick. I have 4 bills that I just want to share with the committee very briefly. The first of which is a bill that we are going to recommend for the committee to move forward to support, for the board to support. This is SB 8 HB 72. It is the Civic Excellence Program. And basically what this bill is it's just a voluntary program that would allow for local school systems to participate in recognizing their students who are attending public schools that promote the civic readiness and civic engagement within the schools. What it is it's basically just a seal of excellence that students would be able to receive per meeting the requirements of the program. And towards the end of the program, they would just submit an annual report to MSDE every year, just listing the students who have been selected for the program and just recognizing them. There's nothing that would be required of the department for this bill. And so we're recommending that the board would support this bill. The second bill, which is very similar to the third bill, they're both curriculum bills. The first of which is HB 161. This is the Health Framework Bill. And like all curriculum bills, which we did last year, we plan on opposing those bills. So we're reminding the committee that we will be opposing all curricular bills this year. These 2 specific bills, one of which is just asking the agency to develop a comprehensive health education framework, which many of you all already know, we have one, and it would require for that framework to include an opt-out provision for the family life and human sexuality topics for the program. But like I said, because of the fact that the board and the department, we already have a process by which we go forward with standards and updates to our curriculum, we will not be supporting this bill. We're going to oppose it. The second bill, also a curricular bill, is basically requiring for every county board of education beginning 2026-2027 to allow for the successful completion of eligible financial literacy courses to be applied towards the fulfillment of student service learning hours. We had a discussion with our internal staff as well as a subgroup for ed policy. And the general consensus here is that we want student service learning hours to remain service learning hours, meaning that we don't want there to be an overlap in student fulfillments and requirements to then become considered service learning hours, because we see the quality and we see the benefit from students being able to serve their communities. So again, we would not like to speak on curriculum bills, anything that changes any requirements for LEAs or schools. And for that reason, we will be opposing that bill as well. The last bill that we have that I wanted to talk with you all about is SB 113. This, you all know very well, is the adding a principal to the state board. For this bill, we're going to be providing a letter of information. And basically what this bill is asking for, it would add a member to the state board who is required to be a certified active school principal here in Maryland. And that person would be selected through an election that's conducted by MSDE. And basically the bill is requesting for this process to begin July 1, 2026. So not this year, but the following year. Again, we're providing a letter of information. Of course, the general consensus is that we are not opposed to having a school principal, especially an active school principal on the board. However, just want the General Assembly to be mindful of the fact that we want to make sure that the board is at a reasonable size. And so just keeping that in mind when we move this bill forward, as far as setting precedents for future bills like this. Okay. That is it on the bills, and please let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I want to also kick it over to Alex for the next part.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to kick it over briefly to Mr. Hands. Do you have anything that you need to add?
Just quickly on those four bills, with the positions on those, all of those hearings, the testimony is due before the next upcoming board meeting. Which is why we had to come to positions before it came to the board on the 28th. So just wanted to clear that up real quick for anyone who was confused. And I'll turn it over to Alex now.
Thank you.
And we have three major topics that we are tracking throughout this legislative session. As you likely know by now, we anticipate that the governor will have an education bill coming very soon. We expect lots of discussion in the General Assembly on this bill, so more to come on that as the bill is made public. Second is chronic absenteeism. We have, of course, set our target for reducing chronic absenteeism as part of our aligned metrics work. And so we have a work group that is addressing this and have engaged a national organization called Attendance Works as our key partner. Mary Gable and her team are keeping that work moving. And then thirdly, we have cell phone bills related to cell phones, very hot topic across the country and here in Maryland, of course. So we have formed a cell phone work group. The first meeting, as I understand, is next week, and that work will be ongoing between now and March. So I'm going to kick it to Zach to share any quick updates on the cell phone work group.
That's pretty much it, Alex. Actually, the work group, as Alex mentioned, I think it's on January 22nd. There's a variety of representatives from local school systems, teachers, parents, and others who will be on the group. I expect they'll wrap up some work to deliver recommendations to the board sometime later this spring. I know there are a number of pieces of legislation around this kicking around in the General Assembly, so we're making sure that they know that we're also engaged in this work as they deliberate those in their committees. So I think that's everything on the cell phone work group for now, and there'll be a lot more to share in the coming months.
Great. And we will continue to track bills closely throughout the session. I'm going to pass it back to Dr. Aline, who may also be introducing another member.
Yes, very, very important. Many of you have already met her, but Maddie's our new education policy analyst. I just wanted to do a quick introduction for her. She may be on the train right now heading home. So Maddie, don't feel pressure to come off mute, but Maddie Hulk is here. She has joined our team and has been a great addition to our staff. So we're grateful. And there she is. Yes.
Hey, I'm so sorry, Akila. I lost you for a couple seconds there.
No worries. I was just introducing you, Maddie, and letting everyone know that you're our new education policy analyst here on our team, and we're really happy to have you. So Maddie will be working very closely with us moving forward on education policy committee notes. Oftentimes we'll give a very brief overview. Of course, you'll see me still, but Maddie will also answer any questions. She and I both will be tag teaming. So we're here to help. Whatever you guys have questions on, we're here.
Any questions from committee members, board members on the legislative update? Lots to watch this session. Should be an interesting one. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the information. We appreciate it. And we are going to move forward to COMAR 13A 1415 Outdoor Nature-Based Childcare License Pilot Program. I believe that we have Dr. Cook presenting.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair McCusker. And thank you for all the board members on the policy committee and all the other board members who are present. We are thrilled to have the opportunity to present an exciting new initiative, the Outdoor Nature-Based Child Care License Pilot Program. It's being implemented pursuant to Code of Maryland Education Article 9.5-1102. The proposed pilot program seeks to license outdoor early care and education programs for full day year-round operations. These programs focus on enhancing children's physical health, mental well-being, and social skills through unique nature-based learning experiences. By fostering creativity and problem solving, they will also help children develop a strong connection with the natural world. As a reminder, this program is for 3- and 4-year-old children who will be outdoors all day long, so 6 to 10 hours a day. Key aspects of the proposed regulation include a maximum of 12 children per program, supervised by 2 adults at all times. So even if the program gets down to 3 kids, 2 kids that day, 2 adults must be present at all times in the outdoor program. A prohibition against operating outdoors. Of children being outdoors in temperatures that are too cold. So that's what we're prohibiting. If you look at the weather chart that was attached to the documents that you received, this would be children who are in cold weather in the yellow and red zones. When it's warm and hot outside, children would be prohibited to be outside in the red zones. Again, these programs are, we are per legislation to focus on programs that are primarily outside all day. And we are putting those weather components in place to ensure children's safety. A requirement for the pilot applicants is to submit a comprehensive application, which would cover policies and procedures in their program, including accommodations for children with disabilities. These regulations were informed by Washington State's model. To date, they're the only state in the country that's implemented a regulated licensed outdoor program. Although Maryland is currently a part of a work group of 10 other states nationally who are continuing to learn about how best to implement these programs and monitor these programs through licensing. And so several members of our licensing staff have been a part of that national professional learning community and are participating in some training around these very, very new license programs. We have also received, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention, our outdoor early care and education work group members who have provided extensive expertise and research to the department. We have been meeting with that group. We started meeting with them in August of 2023 and continued to meet with them through mid-year in 2024. And that's when these regulations were initially published. Feedback from stakeholders, including the Office of Child Care Advisory Council, also shaped the final proposal and recommendation for these regulations. So we received an overwhelming number of public comments. Around 45 to 50 comments were received. While public comment suggested lowering the temperature threshold to 20 degrees Fahrenheit and increasing the program capacity to 18 children, the Maryland State Department of Education has opted to recommend to this committee and to the board maintaining the proposed standards to prioritize child safety and ensure active supervision in an outdoor space that doesn't have physical boundaries. Importantly, programs may include an indoor space or a shelter of some kind that would be licensed for use during inclement weather to continue program operations. As a reminder, this is a pilot program, and we will initially license about 5 to 10 programs statewide per the legislation. This pilot will serve as a learning opportunity for the Maryland State Department of Education and a learning opportunity for participating providers who opt into this pilot license. But it's important to remember our ultimate goal is to keep children safe even during this pilot. Licensing staff are, as I said, are still undergoing specialized training to uphold high child welfare and safety standards in these unique settings. We have a lot of learning to do here, and so we are continuing to ensure that staff have different opportunities to learn more about these settings. As we gain insights through the pilot, as per the legislation, MSDE will come back and refine these regulations to balance innovation with safety. The department recommends adopting the proposed regulations to launch this pilot and gather valuable data to inform future expansions. Thank you, and I welcome your questions and feedback.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cook. Do we have any questions? We did pull this out of the regular consent because we do usually handle permission to adopt under consent agenda, but there was such an overwhelming number of public comment. We wanted to bring it out on its own to board members in case they had any other questions. So does anyone have any questions for Dr. Cook? Comments? Okay, then we don't have any separate action on this. This will go into the consent agenda. Moving on from here, the next thing, oh geez, I just lost my thing. Here it is. The next thing in our agenda is the rest of the COMAR. It's COMAR 13A 0610, COMAR 13A 080117, 13A 07 06 02 and 08, 13A 07 08, 13A 12 02 03, and 13A 12, which all are going up for permission to adopt and will be part of the consent agenda unless we bring anything forward here to change that. I would like to just bring forward that the comments on the pathway to teacher licensure from the fine arts community, that I have asked for some follow-up on that so that we can address those concerns for those pathways that sort of get derailed by this, to promulgate some regulations and make sure that we bring those fine arts pathways back in some way, because anything we can do to make sure that we are able to recruit and retain as many teachers as possible is important. And I did just want to lift that there's going to be a work group looking at that, trying to make sure that that pathway that's kind of getting closed off gets reopened. And I just wanted to bring that publicly. Does anyone, Dr. Lewis?
Thank you for sharing that, because that was the one out of all of those, that was the one question I had, was the transcript analysis piece of the fine arts certifications. Thank you. So thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Meadows, do you want to comment to what the work that's already being done on that really quickly, just so the board can know?
Absolutely. So the Maryland State Department of Education absolutely shared the same concerns with those individuals who provided public comment, and in fact have been working internally with our Fine Arts Office here at MSDE. We have established a work group to begin meeting in February to start this work, and board member McCusker has been nice enough to volunteer to be on that work group, and so we look forward to coming back with their recommendations at a future meeting.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Any other questions or comments from members of the board? Otherwise, we're going to assume all of the permission to adopt will go in on consent agenda. Okay, seeing none, then we'll leave all of that in the consent agenda when we come to the board on the 28th. And I am very surprised to report that at 5:11 p.m., our meeting is concluded. Whoa, unheard of, unheard of. You all are awesome. Thank you, members of the public, for your kind attention, and we look forward to seeing everyone at our meeting next month. Mr. Hands, can you remind me of the date, please? I don't have it in front of me. But you have to unmute, please.
Oh, you think I would learn by now, but February 11th at 4 o'clock.
Okay, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing everyone at the board meeting on the 28th and then seeing everyone back on February the 11th. Thank you, everyone, for your time and attention, and meeting is adjourned.